Looks like we have a quorum. Can we get roll call, please?
Councilmember Foley,
Here.
Councilmember Espaza,
Here.
Chair Johnny Camis.
Here. All right.
We have a quorum.
Well, thank you for that. Councilmember Perales said he is coming but running late, and I don't have any other text from anyone else. We'll move on to the review of the work plan. It looks like we have two items that need to be deferred till the March meeting. Can we get a motion to defer?
Move to defer. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. On to the consent calendar. There is none. On to the reports from our committee. Verbal report on economic development activities.
Great, I'm going to ask Elizabeth Handler, OED's Communications Manager, to present our report.
Thank you, Kim. Committee, Elizabeth Handler, Public Information Manager, OED. Our report this month includes weighty matters and fun stuff as well, so I'll run through it quickly for you. One of the most weighty matters of all is the continuous improvement that the department is making in terms of reporting out on the projects that are underway and in various stages of development across the city. And this month, we not only have a master list of projects, but we also have them broken down into separate reports on housing, office projects, and a report on what's going on in the Diridon downtown areas. And the final exciting element that we're unveiling this month is a very detail-rich interactive map that shows all this stuff. And unfortunately, the technology does not allow me to pop the map up for your enjoyment, but it really wouldn't work if you don't have a cursor to make it go on your own. So I encourage everybody to check it out. But there's a lot going on, and these separate reports make it a lot clearer. We were able to co-host a really good manufacturing event about a week ago in conjunction with Manufacturing San Jose, which allowed us to do both an enormously deep dive with Kate Sophus of SJ Made into a report that was just unveiled. It's a long report title. It's called San Jose's Manufacturing Real Estate Landscape, Sustaining Jobs, Economic Impact, and Shared Prosperity for Diverse Residents, January 2020. And the title pretty much says everything that's in the report. But it's a really interesting report with a lot of details that I think will commend themselves to everybody who reads it. We had an interesting series of presentations by the owners or founders of some of our food and beverage companies, including Knox Cookies, Hermitage Brewing Company, Chromatic Coffee, Sweet Dragon Baking Company, 10th Street Distillery, and California Vegan Food Company, who all shared the challenges and triumphs of operating their own small food and beverage business in the city of San Jose. And then there was a panel chaired by Chris Burton on advanced manufacturing, and the companies represented were Maxar, SSL, Cobham, and what was the other one?
Flex.
Flex, yes, sorry. It's such a short name, I couldn't see it in there. And that was a really good event. You had this business update from OED, so I won't tell you what was in it because you already know, but this is a little summary for our newsletter readers on what was presented in the yearly update that you got last month. We're also sharing information that we got from the Santa Clara County Public Health Officer, advice for employers on how to handle their employees who may have traveled to China before or on February 2nd. And there's a fairly elaborate kind of set of if they traveled to this place or if they were in transit on such and such a date, what you suggest that they should do. And we'll continue to share these with our business audience. We had a couple of very fun openings. One was an amenity that we hope to be able to see more of in terms of our commercial developments, and that's childcare facilities included in them. This one is a Hudson Pacific project on Skyport near the airport that now has an amazing Bright Horizons facility on one of its ground floors. Room for 140 kids. It's very large. They have a chef who creates organic food treats twice a day. They have yoga. They have music. It's an amazing program. So Jill Bourne, who is heading up the initiative around early child care development, was cutting the ribbon, and Chris and his children were there. His kids are graduates of Bright Horizons, so they had taken a little trip down memory lane. We also had a fun opening represented by D3. Unfortunately, Raul, you weren't there. Hapa Masubi, which was a lot of fun, especially if you like Spam. See, I do too. But it's a very fun place that's opened up on the Paseo that offers the Hawaiian musubi handheld treat with Spam and a bunch of other stuffings, along with sushi rice and seaweed. Very tasty and very popular with the college crowd. There was a block-long line by the time we cut the ribbon, so that was exciting. And finally, we have a little guest blog post from ESD on a new online feature that they are providing for restaurants and food service establishments who have to struggle with grease disposal. And this online feature allows the restaurant or the facility to put all those records online. So when an inspector shows up, it's all right there. And a lot of people, if they can't show every record immediately, face a fine or a violation. So it's a huge advantage to be able to have everything just on a tablet or even on a phone. And that's it. And a bunch of events are also detailed.
All right, well, I had a quick question. Anything happen with our flight to Beijing after this coronavirus, started?
I haven't heard anything.
Any of the flights have been curtailed or anything?
Yeah, I don't know. I can find out. Yeah, I mean, I would imagine,
They sent us
yeah,
Oh, we did, all of them? Okay, all right,
suspended,
suspended.
yeah.
Okay, all right. Well, thank you. Thank you for the report. Any questions from my colleagues? All right, hearing none, thank you very much. We'll go on to our next item, which is, it's hammer time, right?
There we go. You've been waiting all day to say that.
Yeah, I have been waiting all afternoon to say that.
I've been waiting 5.5 years to say that. Thank you. Great way to kick it off. Good afternoon, members of the committee. My name is Carrie Adams Hapner, and I'm the Director of the Office of Cultural Affairs. And I have the pleasure to introduce the team with whom we work to make this partnership a success. To my left is Walter Lynn, who's a Deputy Director of Public Works. He oversees facilities management. To my right is Senior Arts Program Coordinator Karen Park, who is a steady hand at the helm with this ongoing partnership. Also, we have Chris Burrell to the right here. He's the Director of the Hammer Theater. We have Shannon Miller, who is the Dean of Humanities and the Arts. And in the audience today, we have Charlie Foss, who's a Vice President of Administration and Finance at SJSU. So I just want to, we also have several members of the Hammer Theater team here as well. We have Lisa Lehman, who's been with us since the beginning, Maria Bones, and Katie Santos. I just want to thank SJSU for your attendance today and being part of this great new model. So it is a pleasure to be here, as I mentioned. If you can mind the slide, yeah, great. So we're here to talk to you about the ongoing operations and maintenance of the Hammer Theater Center. So just by way of background, this is one of our city-owned facilities. And in 2014, the San Jose Repertory Theater, the organization for which this building was built, had declared bankruptcy, if you recall. And the result of that declaration put us in a difficult place. We had to develop a new model. And so we're here 5.5 years later to come to you to, here, I'm going to read the recommendation. to bring this recommendation to you. Thank you. And we're going to cross-reference this for the full council upon your approval. So we're asking that you recommend to the full city council to adopt a resolution authorizing the city manager to negotiate and execute an agreement with San Jose State University for the operations and maintenance of the Hammer Theater Center for a 15-year term with 2 additional 10-year options to renew starting July 1, 2020 for an annual amount of $315,000 with an annual consumer price index adjustments subject to the appropriations approved by the city council. So that's what we're asking you to cross-reference on March 10th. So as I mentioned, just by way of background, you know, I can remember the day that the San Jose Repertory Theater actually declared bankruptcy. And that situation caused a bit of a stir, not only in our national media, local media, but also within our community. Our community was very concerned about the ongoing viability of this very important community asset. And as staff had been working alongside the San Jose Rep for so long, looking at what are the actual costs to operate and maintain this important iconic facility, we knew that we needed to have a partner that was very well capitalized, that could steward this facility and also have the financial capacity to make sure that they're doing proper investments and staffing it so as to steward this important asset. So we actually formed a year-long public process. We had members of the community and nonprofit arts professionals advising the city on kind of what would be the right model going forward. And out of that process, SJSU stepped up and they envisioned a new model that would incorporate their own programming, rentals, and then also some curated programming. And but at the time, it was a new model. It hadn't been tested. So we spent 4.5 years incubating this. And I'm so delighted to be here today to tell you that it is a success. And I really want to thank SJSU for their leadership and their implementation on this. So with that, I am going to also have one more person and group of people I want to thank, and that's the Hammer Theater Advisory Group. Councilmember Perales, he serves on that group. Also, we have a number of community representatives. The Arts Commission has a representative, and also members of the SJSU team as well. So there's a lot of people that have been making sure that this model is being well stewarded and that we're looking at all the right things so we can best serve this community. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Karen Park, who's going to talk through some of the key aspects of the contract. Thank you.
All right, so today, that was 5 years ago. Today, San Jose State is in the 5th year of operating the Hammer with a successful and sustainable model, proven during a 4-year incubation phase. The model features high quality and diverse arts and cultural experiences for the public that reflect the unique characteristics of San Jose. So under San Jose State management, Hammer not only showcases the best of university programming, but also provides a venue for arts and cultural groups to present their best work at discounted nonprofit rates. Live theater has continued to be an important part of programming at the Hammer, and this honors the community desires that we heard when the Repertory Theater went dark. Chris is going to talk more about this shortly, but the programming continues to attract increasing audiences to the theater. Last year, over 57,000 people enjoyed a performance at the Hammer, enjoyed actually over 200 engaging performances at the Hammer. And in addition to activities on the plaza, the economic impact of all of this activity, by one estimate, is over $4 million. Through spending and employment generation. The City-University partnership has kept the Hammer an attractive regional destination and has served as a valuable training ground for the next generation of arts professionals, be they on stage, backstage, or arts management professionals. The partnership has also served as an incubator for future audiences for the arts by exposing college students to the wonders of live theater, as well as school-age children to come downtown and experience a high-quality performance in a beautiful venue. And that is free, actually. So going forward, the key contract terms. So the current incubation agreement ends in June, And we're recommending a term of up to 35 years, as Carrie mentioned, and that breaks down to the initial 15-year term and 2 additional 10-year options to renew. We're also recommending a $350,000 subsidy, which is a 30% increase from the initial incubation agreement, and it contains annual CPI adjustments that are capped at 3%. And this is consistent with other facility operator agreements that have been recently negotiated. Important to note that $15,000 of that subsidy is going to be diverted into a capital maintenance sinking fund for the Hammer, which the city's going to match with $15,000, and that's going to be applied to identified capital maintenance needs, similar to the sinking fund arrangement that the city has with other cultural facility operators, such as the Tech and the School of Arts and Culture. So those sinking funds are intended to supplement, not replace, San Jose State's ongoing facility investment, as well as the city's ongoing capital investment through its capital improvement plan. The terms also call for a continued mix of programming sourced from San Jose State departments, university-sponsored presenting activities, and discounted community rentals by arts and cultural organizations. The partnerships for facility maintenance and capital needs will continue unchanged, with San Jose State responsible for maintenance and repairs inside the facility, and the city paying for exterior maintenance as well as replacement of building systems. So I should note that the Hammer is over 20 years old, and that's at a stage where key building systems are requiring more and costly maintenance, and some are nearing the end of their useful life. So with that in mind, the city is going to be updating a capital repair and life cycle assessment to plan for the future costs and timely capital replacement, including HVAC systems, which are a special concern to San Jose State to avoid expensive emergencies and escalating operating costs. So going forward, the Office of Cultural Affairs, in conjunction with the Public Works Department, will monitor this agreement by reviewing programming, financial activities, and facility preventive maintenance records that are provided by the university. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Chris, who's going to talk more about programming and other things. So actually, I'm going to turn it over to
Okay, no, well, me first. So, well, first of all, thank you from myself, from Shannon Miller, Dr. Miller, and Charlie Foss. We're all thrilled to have this opportunity to really make the Hammer a success. It's a beautiful building that was built long ago, and I have to say that we're all very proud to be the primary tenants of it and taking good care of it. Here's a little snapshot of how we started and where we are. The last graph is a projection through the end of this year, but you can see how attendance has, and this is the amount of people that come to different shows, all of the shows, has grown steadily over the years. The number of events has grown fairly dramatically, as well as the number of performances. So we're thinking that the model of this year, 1920, is very indicative of how busy we will be going forward. And I hope my staff didn't hear that as I just said that. So some of the different programs that we do, we break things into genres. So in the world of theater, we do feel a great responsibility to do as much professional and high-quality theater as we can. Some of the highlights from this last year were The Other Mozart, original play from off-Broadway, Little Black Dress, an original musical about a black dress. Actors from the London Stage, which is really wonderful. They both workshop with students, and then they do a Shakespeare play. And Mummenschanz, which is a Swiss mime and mask theater group. In the world of film, we had a highlight there is the Sundance Short Films workshop and presentations. In dance, we've had Momix and the Ballet Folklorico de Nacional de Mexico. In the world of music, we have proud to say that with San Jose Jazz Curating, we present a Black Cab series, in our Black Box, Cab for Cabaret. So it's a 4 series of little cabaret shows upstairs in what was the rehearsal room. And those are all selling out except for this last one, but the next one will. And we're going to be able to do that going forward. Holidays at the Hammer, besides the Nutcracker that comes, we have things like Cool Yule and other things that add to the holiday atmosphere downtown. And then quickly, also at the Hammer, we have folks like Starting Arts do their work at the theater, San Jose Jazz, both Summerfest and Winterfest, the NorCal Academy of the Performing Arts, musical groups, classical groups that were displaced by the Trianon. We have been able to accommodate some of their seasons at the Hammer. And then New Ballet, which again does Nutcracker, but they also do a story ballet every year, and Fast Forward. And then, of course, CineQuest, which comes up next week. And then I'd like to ask Shannon to say something about SJSU at the Hammer.
So one of the reasons this was such an exciting opportunity for San Jose State is that in addition to presenting and incredible material that Chris has outlined, we also have been utilizing the Hammer Theater as a way to present the best of the work that our students are involved in. And that is cut across all of these genres. Let me say a little bit to how much our student productions contribute to theater. We've put on original productions like the Dreamer Project this fall. We've had original scripts that in conjunction with San Jose Stage have had staged readings, plays on Sarah Winchester and a great play called The Mama Dragon Monologues. And the number of theatrical events, whether that be the Sold Out in the Heights, the first musical by Lin-Manuel Miranda, which was a great event in 2018. But we've also done other plays such as Seminar and Picasso at the Lapin Agile. Because we have a dance program that is looking to integrate public performances and bringing in high-profile dance companies, we've had Kyle Abraham's company, AIM. Kyle Abraham was a MacArthur winner. Jessica Lang's troupe in one of its final tours. This was considered one of the best dance companies in the country, and we're looking towards bringing in Philadelphia in the fall. In terms of music, our School of Music and Dance continues to do an excellent job of original, exciting, and challenging material, both for our students and for the audience, including a Bernstein Mass performance last year. And Kaleidoscope. This is a great event that I've seen families wandering the Paseo wander in and watch students dance and sing and perform musical comedy. It was just absolutely a great event and a real crowd pleaser and something that really draws in the entire community of San Jose. And film, we have sponsored bringing in Sundance, so they have done various programs with us over the years, so they're both working with our students and working with the community. And finally, there are other kinds of things that are unexpected that we've put on at the Hammer in the SJSU at Hammer category, including an international design exhibit and program. So this was a 3-day event that brought people from 25 different countries, brought them to San Jose for an exploration of design. So when I think about what kind of contributions are we making to both the city of San Jose, but also the economic development of San Jose, we see that happening again and again with our SJSU at Hammer events.
And so Shannon wanted to mention, or I'm going to mention it, the students created a 45-second video they'd like you to see if you are so inclined. I think I need to go like that.
So this is our student marketing group that's been amazing and does almost all of the materials, the posters, the distribution materials for the Hammer. And I had wanted to have something that highlighted what I think is so exciting about the Hammer, different things every day.
Sorry.
Great, thank you. And that concludes our presentation, and we'll open it up for any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. And a couple of my colleagues that have questions here. We'll start with Councilmember Foley.
How fun is that? That's really exciting. I was at the Hammer recently for Starting Arts performance of Mary Poppins, where they had kids fly on stage. It was a joyful experience to watch those kids perform. My daughter actually was stage manager for that performance of Starting Arts. So I really love that the Hammer is focused on bringing in groups and nonprofits who desperately need performance space that isn't a little tiny theater that is professional quality. And so I'm so grateful that the Hammer is there and that the partnership is there. It is a beautiful facility, and it would have been really sad to just leave it vacant and not utilized by anyone. I'm also thrilled to hear that San Jose State is benefiting so much from the use of the space, and because performing arts are so critical to the overall well-being of our culture and society. So the more that we can expose our students and our families and our community to a variety of performing arts, the better it is for everyone. It just opens our eyes. So I'm a huge supporter. Question for you, though, with regards to the condition of the Hammer. It's 20 years old and it's aging. The $15,000 sinking fund doesn't seem to be enough to upgrade things. What's the number one thing that you think, besides HVAC, that needs to be upgraded at the Hammer to make it beneficial for the performers and for the audience participant, the experience?
Thank you. Thank you for all your positive comments. I'm going to speak to how the sinking fund is utilized, and then if a member of the team wants to identify any specific capital needs that we know that we need to invest in, or the specific budget. But essentially how the sinking fund works is, so the Department of Public Works, it has its own separate budget for cultural facilities, and each year determines kind of what are the highest needs for across our whole portfolio. But with each respective facility that has a sinking fund, those sinking funds are used a little bit differently. It's not necessarily the capital budget, but it's its own fund that can be used for things that would, like you described, enhance the visitor experience. But it may not be a life safety issue, which ranks it a little bit higher on the Department of Public Works capital list. So it might be something that they might want to do related to aesthetics, or something for the overall customer or audience or performer experience, whether it's certain types of equipment. But that's not the only budget that we have for capital. Karen did mention the HVAC system is one that has definitely been identified as something that it's absolutely critical because it does affect their operating costs. We know that that's a tricky building to heat up and cool down, because I don't know if you've ever been backstage, but it has lots of hallways and different rooms, and also a lot of the artists with whom they work, they require per contract a certain level of temperature within the building, like dancers, for example. Mm-hmm. So with that, I'll pause and see if Public Works or SJSU wants to add anything in addition to that in response to your question. Thank you.
Well, just in general, I would say that the amenity quality of especially the public areas, but also a little, maybe the dressing rooms, sends a message to the theater goer. So if you have, we certainly have clean public restrooms, for example, but they're dated. They're, you can see the caulking marks in between fixtures as they've been repaired over the years. So one of the things that I put on our most recent list to be a priority is, in fact, the refurbishment of at least the 2 or the 4 public restrooms in the lobby area. There's some other things too, but I really have to stress that when you have the public come to a quality facility, they actually make a judgment within about 5 minutes, especially if they go to the bathroom right away. And I'd really, so it's these kinds of things that I don't ever want to forget are important, and keep them on the agenda.
And Councilmember Foley, Walter Lynn, Deputy Director of Public Works, in addition to the items that Chris had mentioned as well too, looking at the functionality and the look of the building are things that we are reviewing as well. Within our capital program, the $15,000 and then the match, definitely not enough for all of the repairs or replacements that we need. From a capital perspective, we do have a 5-year CIP, and there is an item within the deferred maintenance infrastructure backlog report that we have for the Hammer Theater as well. In relation to, or and along with the HVAC system, more mechanical and plumbing system work, as mentioned, the restroom work, some seating and some lighting work as well. So we've identified projects so far. There was also a building condition assessment report done in 2012. It's a bit dated, 8 years old. We are looking at that, refreshing that, looking at the numbers again for those projects and seeing how do we prioritize some of those more critical type of replacements or major repairs.
Great, I really appreciate that. So in the agreement, and correct me if I'm wrong, and I may have misheard this, the interior of the building, who pays for those repairs, and the city pays for the exterior of the building? Is that correct? Did I hear that right? No, I didn't hear that right.
So.
I'm hearing a yes and a no.
SJSU oversees the daily maintenance inside the building. The city is responsible for the exterior.
Right.
But then when it hits into a capital repair or a new improvement, then it's the city's responsibility.
Okay, so the bathrooms, city responsibility. Carpets, city responsibility. Okay.
If you're shampooing the carpets, it's
Got it.
SJSU's
So it's
responsibility.
maintenance, you're
If you're
responsible for
replacing it,
maintenance. Got it,
Yeah.
okay. I just wanted to be clear about that. Again, I'm a huge supporter of the facilities, huge supporter of performing arts of any type, and with that, I will move the report.
Second. Great. I remember a couple years ago, we actually did spend a couple $1 million to get it up to speed when San Jose State University did take it over. Am I correct in that assumption?
yes, each partner invested significant dollars in bringing it back onto its current state, which was definitely needed.
Yeah.
But, maintenance and capital repair are ongoing.
Yeah, I had a different question altogether. The AB5, I've actually been getting a lot of emails from San Jose Jazz and other theatrical groups saying that they're going to have to go out of business, and I keep telling them to talk to their state legislators. But how is that affecting the programming at the theater, and do you see the number of shows dwindling because of this state law?
Yeah, so AB5, for those of you who don't know, it's the new state law pertaining to kind of employers and employees. It's the gig economy, sort of new legislation, but it's impacting the performing arts and some other arts organizations in that they now have to be advised, and they all have their own advisors, whether legal or financial, but they might have to bring on what were previously contractors on as employees. And so that can change the overall operating costs associated with their various business models. For example, San Jose Jazz, when it does its festival, it had a lot of contractors, and now they might have to hire those. But again, we know that this legislation is going to be going through some proposals around cleanup. And there's a lot of advocacy that's happening across the state to help inform policymakers about these impacts. In response to your question about whether or not it's impacting rentals, I would have to defer to Chris to see if you've seen any impact from renters.
No, not yet, but that AB5 just took effect, what was it, February 1st or something, I think. This is being worked on 3 different levels. Locally, it's being worked on by SV Creates, which is doing a seminar tomorrow night, as a matter of fact, at the Hammer, for folks to have a little roundtable about that. It's being worked on by the California Presenters Association, which we are a member, which are all presenters in California, and in fact, it's the largest presenters association in America. And it's also being worked on, interestingly enough, by the California State University system, together with the University of California system. One of my colleagues from Cal State Northridge had the wherewithal to get some, get on agendas, and so it's being worked on in three different ways to, you know, to be able to alleviate those cases like the arts, where I can't see any of us actually hiring all the employee, you know, the acts as employees. It's not feasible. So that's our stance on it.
Yeah, but I mean, is it gonna affect your, well, you said time will tell, basically.
I can't see, because I can't see that it would. So it's not something that you know, I'm participating in those three different venues, but I'm not concerned that it won't get fixed. You know, it's not meant to affect the gig worker of the artist. It's meant, it really came from Uber, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, well, I do understand it came from Uber. I'm mainly asking this question because you have a 10-year contract, and if you're not getting the acts,
Right.
your $315,000 is gonna be, you know,
Right.
spent fairly quickly, I imagine. And, you know, this is a 10-year commitment and followed by 15-year commitment followed by 2 10-year commitments, and I'm all for it. I just wanted to see if you guys are weighing this out.
Yeah. I appreciate you raising this question. It's incredibly important because we don't really know what all the unintended consequences might be when you have kind of one-size-fits-all legislation like this. In addition to the organizations that Chris mentioned, there's another statewide arts advocacy organization called Californians for the Arts, and I'm on the board, and we have a lobbyist in Sacramento. And so I know just through this alliance of different organizations that are working in the arts field, we're definitely looking to raise awareness and promote advocacy so that we can let the policymakers know that, you know, we need to be able to sustain.
All right, well, thank you. Councilmember Perales?
Yeah, thank you very much, and thank you as well for the presentation, and going backwards in regards to what our chair was just talking about. I'll be up on the League of Cities lobbying day with our lobbyists here from the city. Our former council member and assembly member, Osh Kalrose, one of the co-signers of that bill. We'll be lobbying him. I'll be actually traveling with Brendan Rawson from San Jose Jazz to ensure that this, you know, the fixes that get put in place are gonna be directed in the right area, because as we know, certainly there's some unintended consequences that are happening. So I think that there is some positive action, right, in that regard. But getting back to the opportunity here, I have been really grateful to be part of the Hammer Theater Advisory Group. And it really has been a successful partnership, as you pointed out, Carrie. One that we, you know, endeavored into something, you know, that we had not done before and that really there wasn't a playbook for. But yet we had a theater sitting empty and idle. And we really were looking for a partner, and initially didn't know who that was going to be. And when San Jose State stepped up and we initiated this partnership, I think the two of us, right, both sides, and the community actually, were three-part, right, we're really trying to figure out how are we going to make this successful. And through the Hammer Theater Advisory Group, I had the opportunity to watch that grow to where we've landed today. And thank you as well, Carrie, for your leadership, all the city staff team, and for the partnership to make that happen. Chris has been tremendous. And then it's even led to, and I'm sorry I didn't ask this question a couple weeks ago, but it's led to the opportunity where a couple of my colleagues and I have the opportunity to host an event, including Councilmember Esparza here to my right, coming up next month on the 18th, which is on the calendar here. And then I thought, oh, you know, I meant to ask that question. Are we still going to have those opportunities where the city of San Jose, like for the Cornerstone of the Arts Awards and stuff like that? I just didn't see it in the language, and so are those opportunities going to be there within the contract for that type of use?
Yeah, so. City use is still there, so we've got
Okay.
12 uses.
Okay, great. So, and for my colleagues that aren't aware, we do a number of events, the biggest one being the Cornerstone of the Arts every year, but knowing that that was an opportunity, and actually it was the conversation with Lisa that helped me to see that we had. I knew that obviously the venue was there, but that we had an ability to maybe take advantage of a city use. And so getting that approved through the city manager's office was great. And so I will invite my colleagues on March 18th at 6 p.m. You'll see it on the calendar here, the Devil in Silicon Valley. We actually partnered up with SJSU as part of their Borderlands series. And thank you again, Lisa, for the direction on that, and Dean Miller for allowing us to bring forward this opportunity. We're going to be having Dr. Stephen Peaty, who came here in December to talk about his book, Devil in Silicon Valley. Along with Dr. Al Camarillo from Stanford, emeritus, and it'll be moderated by Dr. Julia Curry, who's a professor at San Jose State. And so tremendous conversation around the history of inequity in San Jose, and it's a free event. We'll be expanding on the conversations that we've had here at the City Council, and we're really looking forward to it. And so thank you to SJSU and the Hammer staff for partnering with us. Invitations are going out, and our colleagues will be getting them. Actually, we're just kind of, those just got finalized this past week. So we invite everybody, and we hope to fill it up and eventually be sold out. Again, just a great opportunity to bring an event like this to the community. I know that, and I mentioned this in the meeting that we had, over the last 5 years, I have had the opportunity to really get more engaged with the Hammer from the beginning of HTAG and actually getting it reactivated. But then to actually, seeing events on the calendar that my wife and I, or my family and I, wanted to attend, when it was a more of a singular use, it wasn't necessarily something that I was going to be drawn to, maybe on a monthly or bi-monthly basis. But now there's almost something happening every single month, right, that where an individual like myself, and really that's opened up to the entire community. And as you saw, I really love that video, Dean Miller, that the students put together. What's not at the Hammer, right? And so it's tremendous. We brought our son there for his first time to see a San Jose Nutcracker, and there was, and every year they host a particular one for the little ones, because as you all know, and it was great, we were there, half the audience is little kids going crazy, but it's an opportunity for them, right, to see their first show, and you feel comfortable because you're there with other parents and their kids, and so you go, all right, if my kid starts losing it, I don't feel bad because this is the show for that. And it was great. We went with the whole family, and we went out and patronized a restaurant in downtown. And so what the Hammer has done, it's really brightened up an area of San Jose that unfortunately had gone dark for a couple years. And I think this opportunity that we have now for the next 15 years at least, and then on to potentially 35 years, is going to be a great opportunity for both ourselves, San Jose State, and the community. And so that's why I happily am seconding this and look forward to the partnership ahead.
Okay, Kim? Yeah, we are.
Yeah, I just would like to publicly recognize Carrie Adams Hapner and Karen Park. I think those of you who weren't here 7 years ago, you can certainly appreciate how extremely difficult this situation was. There were a lot of feelings, a lot of uncertainty, a lot of, oh my God, where do we go from here? And so it really was Carrie and Karen that just provided a steady hand through many years to go from extremely difficult to extremely successful with a sustainable business model. And I also want to point out, they provided this leadership also for the Mexican Heritage Plaza. And that School of Arts and Culture, again, extremely difficult to extremely successful and extremely sustainable. So thank you to Carrie and Karen. And I just commend San Jose State for your vision and partnership. And you can just see already the number of lives, like literally, that are going to be impacted by the partnership that you created is just, it's tremendous. So thank you.
Yeah, I agree. Thank you very much. And I just popped into my head, the 315,000, is it TOT funds?
It's general fund.
General?
It's citywide. All of our cultural facility O&M agreements are funded through the general fund.
Okay. All right. Another question? Okay.
Well, not, I believe it was this room that the community conversation was in it was actually before I was elected, but I came through and it was extremely tense.
It was.
So just you bringing that up brought back the memory of how difficult that meeting was here. So I think, it's terrific that now we're sort of full circle and thank you. I would echo that as well. Thank you to the both of you.
Councilmember Perales, that was the first night I ever met you at that community meeting. Yes, I remember
You're a
too.
brave man, Washington.
But there's one thing I want to say in recognition of the university before we wrap. We had a great conversation at our last HTAG meeting, and one of the members of the group that works for SJSU, one of the professors, really said that since SJSU has been operating the Hammer Theater, it is increasingly becoming a university of choice for performing arts students across the whole California university system. So we can be really proud of that. We are building the next pipeline, and that's great for San Jose's reputation as an arts center, and it's great for the next generation. So I just want to acknowledge you because that's really, really a feather in our cap.
All right. Well, that's great. All in favor?
Aye.
Nobody's opposed. Thank you very much. And we'll go on to item number 3, which is the Downtown Wayfinding Program update.
Yes, that is true to size. It's an actual prototype.
But you get the idea.
Yeah, we get the idea.
It's gonna be big, colorful, and very informative.
It's got a map.
All right, good afternoon. We don't have a Vanna, so we'll just let it sit on its side, which is fine. My name is Jessica Zank. I'm Deputy Director for the Department of Transportation. And with me today is Sal Alvarez, Executive Analyst for the Office of Economic Development, and Blage Zalalich, also with Economic Development, Downtown Manager, wishes she was here, but she is home with a cold. So thanks to her for keeping that to herself. Sal is going to provide you with the Downtown Wayfinding Program update, and then we'll be here to answer any questions that you have about this.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Sal Alvarez. I'm Executive Analyst in the Office of Economic Development. In spring 2018, Council awarded a master agreement to Urban Design Consultants, City ID, to work began to develop wayfinding program through a series of workshops and user testing. After the first round of workshops, there was a consensus to develop a pilot along the West San Carlos corridor between the McHenry Convention Center and San Jose State University to encourage more trips to the South First Area SOFA District. You may recall that last year's update, City ID conducted a user testing during the NHL All-Star Game weekend in front of the Convention Center. And so here are just some pictures of workshops that were held here in City Hall and over at Forager in the SOFA District over this past year. And here's some images of the user testing that took place. The one on the left is during the NHL All-Star, and the one on the right is actually during San Jose Comic-Con last summer. And so if you can kind of notice, the design iteration changed, I wouldn't say dramatically, but it definitely changed from the first user testing and then after workshops to the second. And that's actually what the representation that we have over in the corner there. So here's the recommended family of totems. The second from the left is what we're referring to as the navigation totem, which is what will make up the mesh of the overall network. The hotspot totem we are referring to as the destination totem. The big news is that San Jose State we'll be working with City ID to prototype and test the hotspot totem this year, so we'll be able to deploy that product once it has been finalized and able to develop a stronger proof of concept of our overall program. So it won't just be our navigation product that we're piloting. We'll be able to work with San Jose State to then also pilot the destination totem as well to have a beginning, middle, and end sort of trip for folks to use. So part of the reason for the changes into the design was to provide greater stability and to allow for attention to the addition of translucent glass accent panels to take advantage of sunlight and shadow play on the sidewalk, as well as enable pedestrians and car drivers to see if someone is standing behind one of the totems to provide better safety and visibility. So therefore, if it isn't just like a blank solid wall on the sidewalk where someone can kind of step out and you will not know they're there, it's to provide a little more visibility and safety as part of the design feature. Industrial designers Billing Jackson have developed the engineered drawings for the products for prototyping and formal procurement. The products will contain hardware for powered illumination to promote nightlife activity and provide additional reassurance for evening exploration. So I know one of the initial questions was, will it be backlit or lit up at night? And that's what we're planning on doing. This always takes a little while to load, it's funny. So during the stakeholder workshops, there was a consistent interest and encouragement to explore beyond the downtown core and into adjacent neighborhoods and business districts, especially as we expand downtown to the west to include the Dearden Station area. So cartography consultants at DCR Design helped to expand the base map to include the Dearden Station area, the Alameda Business District, Japantown, East Santa Clara Street, San Jose State University and its South Campus, the south of downtown area along South First Street, and Kayawillow. And so here is actually, this is like they do one of those cool little automated features. So here's a larger view of the hand-drawn base map, which is actually, this is just a portion of the map. There's actually a little bit bigger than this, where they've actually gone through, hand-drawn, identified where those active retail activities are. Those are largely the color in blue on the map. We really are trying to encourage more pedestrian, ground level, street level activity, and encouraging folks to explore more of downtown and beyond the downtown.
Great. As Sal mentioned, we're really looking for partnerships throughout this wayfinding program to make sure that we're speaking with one kind of design language so that the wayfinding is really effective, but also it's not just the city investing, it's also partners like San Jose State. One of the ways that we've done that is that the Department of Transportation and Housing Department co-applied and were granted state funding through the Affordable Housing Sustainable Communities Program for 2 projects over the last couple of years. And as part of that AHSC program, we have wayfinding funding that's going to build upon this wayfinding program. So that's in the North San Pedro area with the Bassett Street project and in the broader SOFA area with the Ballback project. So those are other ways that we're kind of multiplying the funding that we've invested as a city. And we will continue to seek grant funding when available and work with other partners, again, like San Jose State or like the bike share system, which has actually used the same maps and language as well. And with that, this is just that same slide about the timeline moving forward, and we're here for any questions that you have.
All right, well, looks good to me, too. I hope you don't get offended, there's no questions. Oh, there's one question. Sorry.
I might be confusing this. I might be confusing this with something else, but I could have sworn we had something where there would be digital changes and we'd swap out. So this seems static, right?
So the first phase of the program is static wayfinding. We definitely have plans, certainly desires to do the digital interactive wayfinding. That's going to be more expensive. And I think we're waiting to see what's going to happen with the work that's being done to allow for advertising in the public right-of-way. And that may be a potential way to partner and help fund those, because those are much more expensive products to put in place, to maybe partner with partner, I guess, to deploy those types of wayfinding elements.
Yeah, and that was one of those questions that we asked, and the consultant team pretty early on said you should use static information where that's most appropriate, and then the interactive kiosks where more depth is needed, like at these hotspot and destination and arrival places. But that for most steps along people's journey, what they really need is best done through static information that can be updated pretty easily.
Okay, sounds good. I'll move the report.
Second. I just have a
Councilmember Foley?
quick comment that I had a note to ask and I completely forgot. the wayfinding signs are really wonderful once you're outside and you see them, but I was in City Hall at the information desk looking for a map to hand out to someone who wanted to walk around the city, and there weren't any maps there. And they said they didn't know when city maps were coming or any availability. So shouldn't that be a first point of contact for people, that we have a visitor center set up there with maps so that people could come and pick them up, and then maybe operate as a welcome booth or a concierge or something along those lines? How can we incorporate that in this wayfinding?
So Councilmember Foley, thank you very much for that question. So right now, we do actually have a downtown printed map and a digital interactive map where you can actually go in and download a map to your phone, which has hot links to businesses that are located in the map area. We are sort of in the middle of a production period where we're updating that base map that we usually would use for the print map and the final map that we're going to be using for the first iteration. And so, so right now we're trying to sync up our production cycles so that when we do do the print map, we can actually then roll it into the actual on-street maps and not over-duplicate efforts. And so we're working with the Downtown Association to have a regular cycle to update the printed map, but you should be seeing a printed map again very soon.
Wonderful, I appreciate that. Are there any old maps that we can stick in the information center so people can just grab an old map even?
We might have a stack or few
Okay, good.
laying around.
Thank you.
Great. All right. Councilmember Perales.
Sorry, thank you. And in regards to that map, I'm just kind of curious, the updating of it. For instance, I was just down at the opening of Urban Kiosk, the growth of our East Santa Clara businesses, and you'll see on the at least the one map that we have here that shows sort of the entire downtown. Some of those businesses denoted with the little blue coloring, and I'm just kind of curious in regards to the growth of the map, and obviously as new businesses and stuff like that come in, what does that look like?
So we're going to be on a 6-month update cycle. So every 6 months, we work with the Downtown Association. We'll also be working with the Business Association, for example, that are part of this larger map effort to update what the new businesses that kind of come and go and during a normal cycle. So there is a little bit of churn. Part of the other work that we're doing for the design is actually being able to design a kiosk that we can actually update fairly quickly and inexpensively to update the directory on that 6-month cycle.
And then, so what about, like, for instance, this business I was at this morning, it's not associated to San Jose Downtown Association. So would we be working with, those auxiliary groups?
Yes.
There's not many, but right as we start to branch out.
Yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. Excited about the progress.
Wonderful.
All right. All in favor? Any opposed? Thank you very much. We'll move on to item number 4, which is the status report on urban village zoning districts and the revised amenities framework. Doing my best.
Thank you. Jennifer Piozza with the Planning, Building, and Code Enforcement Department. I'm presenting about the Urban Village Zoning Districts and Revised Amenities Framework. So to start off, a little history. As you're aware, the General Plan 2040, one of the major strategies was to use our urban villages as a way to implement much of our new housing and jobs growth. One of our biggest strategies for greenhouse gas reductions, economic development, and a way to build a healthy city through complete communities. We have 11 approved urban village plans to date, 2 urban village plans that are underway, which are Barrios Sabart and North First Street. And we also have 2 additional planning areas that have grant funding, which are Southwest Expressway Race and our East Side Alum Rock, finishing off the Alum Rock East Santa Clara corridor. All of these village planning efforts involve extensive community outreach. As part of the general plan, we're directed to have financing mechanism to deliver public amenities and improvements. And as part of this, So further, in 2013, we were directed by council to actually include these financing mechanisms in urban village plans moving forward. And as such, we adopted on May 22nd, 2018, the Urban Village Implementation and Amenities Framework. This was a value capture strategy used when a project rezones a property from an employment-based zoning district to a zoning district that allows housing. A developer is asked to share the increase in land value with the city and community by funding desired amenities within an urban village. And the adopted urban village plans are used as guidance for which amenities to prioritize, as well as community outreach. Exempt from this implementation framework were projects that were 100% commercial, 100% affordable, signature projects, and then other discretionary permits and zonings that were on file prior to the adoption of the framework. So stepping forward to different state laws and their implications. So in 2018, the state of California adopted Assembly Bill 3194, which prohibits local agencies from requiring a rezoning for a housing project. Since the implementation framework required a rezoning action to increase land value, that increased value would be used to fund amenities, the legal mechanism for that amenities extraction disappeared. Further, Senate Bill 1333 was adopted in 2019 as well, which requires charter cities like San Jose to bring the general plan and zoning code into alignment. As such, it's the city's responsibility to rezone properties that allow housing under the general plan to zoning districts that also allow housing. Further removing that implementation framework value capture mechanism, because the rezoning is already taken care of by city staff. Staff is actually working on multiple projects currently to do the alignment, and we have it in two phases as listed on this slide. One is to do aligning the uses in the zoning code, which we've already completed and has been approved by council. And the second is to adopt new zoning districts for further compliance. So the state has been busy. So a Senate Bill 330, which was effective this January 2020, prohibits the city from downzoning properties to reduce residential capacity without upzoning somewhere else in the city to ensure we do not lose any housing capacity potential. Also, it prohibits cities from adopting new development standards like open space and setbacks that reduce the overall development capacity or potential for housing on an individual project site. As such, staff can no longer apply subjective standards to housing projects. So all design, general plan, and other standards must be objective, meaning it involves no personal or subjective judgment by a public official and being uniformly verifiable by reference to an external and uniform benchmark or criterion, i.e., it can't be based on feeling. Lastly, this law prohibits cities from enacting new development standards that would prevent a housing project from building to the maximum allowable general plan density.
Yeah,
Lots of great information.
I like that.
So moving forward,
I like some of the-
staff proposes incorporating the urban village implementation framework amenities into zoning districts as objective standards to comply with these different state laws. The types of amenities that we'd be asking for had to be scaled back because the city cannot require improvements not directly beneficial to a project. The preliminary approach is to allow the applicant to choose a specific number of amenities from a list in the zoning code. So they would have a menu. We'd say you need to pick 2 out of 6, for example. Not solidified yet, but that's an idea, which would then be informed by community outreach efforts and adopted urban village plans as a place to start from and then to solidify that selection. There are many cities throughout the United States that include a public benefits or amenities program in their zoning code, but it's typically as a housing incentive program. And they typically trade an increase in FAR, so floor area ratio, or a trade of height and density to be able to extract something from a development. However, San Jose has very generous floor area ratios, very generous height, and very generous density already provided to many of our housing sites. So this sort of trade is not as realistic for our projects moving forward and would likely not result in many amenities, if any. So we wanted to go through the amenities list of what we think we can incorporate into the zoning code. So publicly accessible open spaces, this was on the original amenities framework. Commercial space above and beyond, something that we've been exploring. Non-formula retail, this is used in places like Los Gatos, where to increase smaller businesses or mom and pop shops, you can set very objective criteria about having these sorts of spaces move in. We're still exploring this. Placemaking art installations installed at the site. This could be new art, but this could also be retaining existing art and reinstalling it back to encourage maintaining existing amenities that are in the village. On-site streetscape amenities, so on the project frontage, making decorative sidewalk, for example, that's directly there related to the project, sidewalk furniture, sidewalk planters, things like that. And then lastly, what we're exploring is there a way to help support the PIO, PDO parkland requirements and giving them some sort of trade if they were to actually build parkland or do a land dedication. I guess the last point here, we do have 2 amenities that are not included on this list that were in the original amenities list, and those include off-site improvements such as signage, trails not on the project frontage, and transportation improvements. The second amenity not included is the ability to pay into a fund that the city would use to construct street improvements, so think gateway signs. Staff cannot establish an objective standard for these amenities, which is independently verifiable, and cannot establish a nexus between these amenities and individual housing projects in a village. Further, even if a nexus or a connection were established, the requirement of an amenity must be roughly proportional to the impact of the development causes. Roughly proportional typically means there's a study that's done to price out the cost of the improvement, and then we know the full extent of that improvement. Oftentimes, we don't have a sense of the cost of the overall improvement and the timeline for that implementation. And that lack of nexus means that the city cannot require these improvements of a single development project. Otherwise, the disproportional ask is considered a taking or a taxation if it's done through a fee. So due to the new limitations under state law that only objective standards can be applied to housing projects, staff must adjust our current planning efforts to meet this requirement and revisit approved planning documents to bring them into compliance. And so there are a lot of words on the slide, but basically it lays out, we have North First Street and Barry S. Bart moving forward. We're looking back at them before they get in front of the council to ensure that they have objective standards for housing, and there's nothing subjective. And we also separately have our citywide design standards and guidelines project moving forward. That's timelined to be in front of council this year. And working with the design team to ensure this is our mechanism moving forward for village plans to have a consistent standard or list of standards that we're using for all villages, and then we build upon that, trying to reduce redundancy. We have many outreach efforts underway, and this is not a complete list. We are just beginning our outreach into the community, and we'll start engaging with the council offices to further this outreach, but we're here today at CED. We also are going to have community meetings and developer focus groups throughout from February through April. We'll go to the Developers and Construction Roundtable that planning hosts, and then we have to go in front of the Airport Land Use Commission, Planning Commission, and City Council. So the implementation is following the adoption of mixed-use zoning districts with these amenities incorporated. The short-term, about a year plan, is any proposed residential or residential mixed-use project in that village, in an urban village, would be processed as if they're in those zoning districts. And so we just suspend reality. You might be zoned commercial, but because you're trying to process a housing project, your general plan supports that housing project, we pretend you're in one of these urban village zoning districts that supports your project. It is the city's requirement later on to rezone you ourselves as part of our effort, but we cannot force the developer to do it, but we apply those standards of the new zoning districts. And then the long-term approach is we will be doing the rezonings ourselves as part of our work, the citywide team, to bring everything into compliance. And we're here for questions. Thank you.
Yeah, well, I appreciate staff's work on trying to interpret the law while trying to protect our, I guess, ability to zone the way we want to zone. And I wanted to ask a couple things. On this open space, like, I'm just afraid that we're not going to end up with any parks for anybody, like anything that people can actually enjoy and gather, I'm just afraid that, that's my biggest fear in the way we're looking at this. And what are your thoughts?
Sure, so the existing parkland dedication ordinance and impact ordinance are still in effect. It's just anything that planning can impose upon the projects. That's the kind of thing that we still need to work out and negotiate. Part of why we're including the publicly accessible open space as one of the amenities is we think we can work in a trade-off with common open space to make it actually something that someone wants to build on site. Further, many of the projects we seek that come on file that are doing these sorts of projects want to provide these open spaces.
Yeah.
It's a good amenity, it's good for leasing, it makes their project more viable, but the fear is definitely there. The state is worried that we and other cities are reducing our overall housing capacity by imposing these sorts of restrictions. But it doesn't get rid of our existing nexus-driven ordinance requirements.
Okay, good. We still have some control. And are we being asked to, because all of these areas are commercial, and so by building residential on them, we are still requiring commercial. Are we being asked to reduce the requirement on commercial?
No, so the projects would still need to be consistent if, under this framework, they would move forward consistent with the urban village plan and those objective requirements for commercial space within those plans.
Right, and that doesn't mean that under different other state laws, which we did not go over, like state density bonus or other laws where they can actually waive objective requirements like commercial, there's that other sort of piece where you have perhaps a density bonus project that's a mix of the affordable and the market rate. They could waive their commercial requirement if they could prove it makes their project better. So there is that component. But for a standard run-of-the-mill market rate projects, as long as we are objective and say it is required, and it's very clear and there's no wiggle, we can actually impose that.
Okay. And how about our riparian setback policies that we already have? Are those affected in any way? Because you said that,
As long as they're objective.
okay. Okay. Councilmember Perales had some questions.
Yeah, thank you. Going back to that list of the amenities, what you described was that there's only two essentially then that were on the previous list, or our current list, I guess, but that did not carry over to what we could deem objective. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, so, and it's really in, I guess, the way that we've written it up and defined it today, right? That we're saying, these are all there today, but they're just not necessarily written up in a way that they're defined as these objective standards. And so is that why we're having to sort of redo that? I guess that's what I'm a little confused about, because these are already things that I guess we're allowing as an amenity, but I guess the difference seems to be between was it deemed objective or not.
So the reason why we have to redo our approach is because our implementation and amenities framework was invalidated because of state law not allowing that rezoning. So there was no way for us to do the ask of the amenities because they no longer have to rezone to build housing. And housing is the only kind of project that was held to those amenities standards.
Okay, so it was
the
based on the rezoning. Okay,
Yes,
got it.
that legislative act. And so because we just now have to, if your general plan allows you to build housing, there's no reason to rezone. That's the issue. Our standards as we define them today in the invalidated framework may be good enough. They may be objective enough, but we're taking this opportunity to look at them again, just to tighten up language as necessary.
Okay.
You remember our theory was, and the reality was, we were actually creating value for the property owner by rezoning it to mixed-use residential, and we had wanted to be able to capture some of the value. So Jennifer's absolutely right. Our hands are really tied now, and so we can have these amenities that are tied to a specific project, but if they have shared value to the place, we cannot use the tool that we wanted to.
Okay.
Yeah, that's correct. So I think one of the big changes that this does not include is there was in the existing, that's now invalidated framework approved by council, there was sort of a catch-all. It had the list of amenities, which largely were what you see, and it had sort of like, and other things identified by a village. So for example, a number of communities wanted gateway signs, and that's not the kind of thing that we can include in this anymore. So it was just it was a catch-all, and that's unfortunately, the world of being flexible and discretionary is going away, and I think that has a positive side and a downside, even for a developer, frankly. There's, for everybody. So sometimes people don't want flexibility, they want clarity, other times they want to be able to figure out another approach, and so it's a different world we're in with all the state laws.
Okay, and then the outreach slide, so obviously we went through a lot of effort in community engagement on all of these urban villages. This process here, I see the community meetings and developer focus groups and stuff like that. I guess I'm just kind of curious how we're intending to connect with those urban village stakeholders, and then ensure that they're part of the process. I know that you're already doing some of that, right, and trying to directly engage. So just if you can describe that.
Sure. Yeah, so I think with our approach here to community outreach, we'll be working with, particularly because this is going to impact those urban villages that are already approved by council. We'll be going back out, working with those groups that we engage with during the development of those urban village plans, as well as the development of the implementation framework, revisiting and engaging them on where we're at now and our path forward and approach, and getting, providing information and seeking their input.
And we have had some preliminary meetings with some of the Five Wounds village leaders, because when the state laws first came down, we wanted to make sure that they were aware. They have some projects that are moving along very quickly, and they had expressed a lot of interest. So we're starting to roll it out to some of the leaders that have expressed the interest in this.
Okay, thank you. And you said the one decision that's not made yet is something along the lines of like a developer choosing two of these amenities. So when do we expect to, is that within the next, I guess, as this process is rolling out here, like at what point in the timeline?
Correct. So before we get to the Planning Commission, we're going to want to have that nailed down, what we want to do. And so the two ideas that are floating around is, one, pick from a menu, or two, outright require. And so we're trying to balance the need for flexibility, because every site is different. Some places cannot accommodate an open space, for example, because they're more constrained. So keeping it more in line with the previous amenities framework, that's why we have two options, but we're kind of, it seems like people lean toward the options approach.
Do we have to pick one of those, or we couldn't sort of make it unique per urban village?
It's a lot of maintenance and a lot of updates to Title 20 over time. And we're trying to think of something that is the most sustainable approach. You could, but then people have to look for information in multiple places, and that leads to more mistakes in the long run. And it's harder too. We want to make things as easily accessible for the public and for the developers and for the staff to make sure they know where to look. This is your one section to do amenities. If we have to refer to multiple places, there's room for error and frustration, but we can consider it.
I will say that the village plans themselves set priorities. They have already and will going forward, so staff will refer to that. But that being said, sometimes priorities in the community change. But as we review a project and are looking at the amenities, I mean, staff would look at the plan for sort of making a recommendation on what amenities should be included. And then there's a community meeting to validate, like, is that still, for example, if it's public art, is that still a priority for this community? The community may say it absolutely is, or it may say, well, actually, in this case, it's not. It's something else on the list. So that's why we have guidance, but there's some flexibility to adjust over time with individual projects.
Okay. Are you looking for, or were you looking for that specific feedback on this option here, this sort of, and will you be looking for that throughout some of these discussions, or is this more of an internal conversation that's being had? I just didn't see that highlighted here, that was something you were looking for our feedback, and I know it's not coming back to CED before it goes to council, so.
I mean, I think if you have some thoughts or feedback, we're definitely open to hearing them.
Okay, it was similar to what I just said, which would be, obviously, the flexibility of either, like, could we make it unique for each urban village, but I recognize there may be some challenges there. I think for me personally, then it would be, I would lean more towards the select two, right? Be a little bit more open, even though that might not necessarily give us more certainty on what we know we're going to get, but at least that helps us in the discussion with the developer, a council office, and the community to each project. And so, I definitely would like yourselves to sort of kick around a little more on the opportunities of, how unique could we make this for each individual site. So, thanks.
Councilmember Esparza?
Thank you. Yes, I echo that, really kind of taking that unique equity approach. Some things are gonna, we have urban village a strategy throughout our city. And I think different neighborhoods have different needs. And I think we should be as flexible as we can on that. I had a couple of questions. One is, could childcare be included as an amenity? Jared's
Yeah, that's
smiling.
something we'll definitely, we will be exploring. It potentially can, there's definitely some implementation challenges to that in terms of long-term, looking at requirements of how long might you require a property to stay in business for childcare. But we're looking at different approaches on how we might make that work in terms of, could you set up some kind of parameters around the site or the design of the space itself that would facilitate space that would work well for childcare. So that's something we're looking at. In our look at what other jurisdictions are doing with this approach in terms of requiring amenities, there are a couple cities that do delve into childcare or elder care. So we're going to look further into that, and I think it's Seattle and then the city of Bellevue, Washington, are other cities that are looking at childcare under this particular type of context.
We are very aware. We have prior council direction through the policy prioritization process to look at how we can encourage more childcare facilities, especially in
family-friendly.
mixed-use developments throughout the city. So urban villages are sort of by definition a good place to consider.
Cool, thank you. And then I wanted to, because they're not here, I wanted to bring up a letter that the San Jose Parks advocates sent about this, about the ability to compile parcels or assemble parcels for open space. Have you had a chance to review that letter? It's requesting that San Jose change the park size limitation to reflect the current requirements.
Yeah, we did review the letter, and it's, something we can look into in terms of going above and beyond the PDO. The challenge we see is that, again, these need to be objective standards, and we don't think we would have the nexus to require a project to provide above and beyond what's already required with our PDO. So we see some
The
challenges
letter
there.
from Jean Dresden, I read it as well. I think many of the issues she's raising are really interesting issues that have to do with our parks ordinance and implementing it in highly urban settings. So as we think about potential changes to the park ordinance over time, I think those kinds of ideas might be part of that scope of work, more so than this work per se.
Can you say that again? It would be required to the what?
Yeah, I think some of the things that she was mentioning, for example, the way our parks ordinance is implemented, we don't allow a developer to dedicate parkland unless it is of a certain acreage. Is it a quarter acre? Something that can be larger than you might, say, typically find in an urban area that's being redeveloped. But that's a requirement of our ordinance now, and it's very strictly applied because it's our ordinance. So my understanding is the Parks Department is is looking at the ordinance and how it might need to be refreshed. And so I think those kinds of suggestions are probably part of the scope of work for that, more so than fitting into this particular work with urban village amenities, because it's a absolute requirement to comply with our PDO, PIO for all residential development.
Well, one of the things that they pointed out was that it's, many of the parcels within many of the urban villages are so small, so that, and she gave a couple of examples, Buena Vista Park and Del Monte Park. Neither of those parks would have been able to be assembled under the current guidelines. Is that correct?
I believe so. I think the bigger issue here is that the park's PDO, PIO model is based on a much older suburban version of San Jose, where you could acquire 1.5, or not even 1.5, 2, 3, 4 acre parks, would have baseball fields, soccer fields, basketball, and that land is not much of it's available anymore. It's built, and you have to put together a 8,000 parcel with a 6,000, with a 7,000. So it's a lot more challenging. These urban villages are much more urban developed areas. The parcels are smaller. Developing that traditional suburban park is going to be a lot more challenging. And so this model is more about building small urban spaces, much like you see in cities, San Francisco and Chicago and that sort of thing. This approach is above and beyond PDO, PIO, so keep that in mind. So this is really looking at what can a developer provide above that, and so we're looking at the POPO model, which is publicly accessible, privately owned open space. Parks is, I think, my understanding, the process of readjusting their standards as part of their looking at their PDO, PIO because of the changing world that we're in. So I think the minimum size, I believe now, is 1.5 acres. I may be wrong, but it's something like that. So I think so what Jean's bringing up are sort of these larger questions about where does our Parks and Rec department go from here in terms of implementing our parks goals? Do they need to adapt to a more urban model?
Yeah, I think that's a really important discussion to have. I mean, if everywhere from Cambrian to Alum Rock, I think it just reinforces the need for flexibility that Councilmember Perales brought up earlier as we move forward. That's it. Thank you.
Councilmember Foley?
Thank you. Just to piggyback on comments made about the amenities and the selections, I think it's important to be as flexible and unique, which would allow each development to be as unique as possible that fits its particular needs. So I like the pick two options instead of just saying you have to have these two. The pick two allows the developer to consider what that is, what the community wants and what will benefit the community rather than us dictating it. And if we just say two, that's still objective. They can pick any two from this particular menu, so I would be a proponent of that. And do we have a motion?
No.
Then so moved.
Did you have a comment? Okay, Councilmember Diep?
Yes, thanks, Councilmember Camus. I don't recall if you've been presenting before, but that was a very impressive performance, fielding those questions, mastery of the subject matter, so very good. I hope to see you present more. I have a question. Well, I was listening to your presentation, and coming into this meeting, I have a parallel understanding of what we're doing here, and correct me if I'm wrong. So what I see is we have urban village zoning generally. Now the state's come in and they've said, anywhere that allows housing going to be built by right. There's less discretion for cities to kind of pinpoint where the housing goes now because we want more housing statewide. So we're creating these 5 kind of suburban village categories: commercial, regional transit, local transit, commercial corridor, and neighborhood. And when I see that as an attempt from the city to kind of reclaim some of that discretion. Because if my understanding is correct, when you have urban village, it's a mix of stuff. It's commercial, it's restaurants, it's office, it's residential, it's all of that in some sort of combination. But because you allow housing, the state says you can do housing anywhere housing is allowed. Potentially what we've created with urban village is housing all across the board, no commercial, no office space, no whatever else. So that's why we're breaking it up into these 5 subcategories. Is that fair?
Well, So I think we're still evaluating the state laws in terms of how much local control we have or do not have in relation to allowing housing and going commercial. You're likely to hear more about that coming up soon. So that's still a question mark. But yeah, I think, so in general, even before the state law change, staff really believed that it made sense to have a zoning district that implement the general plan for urban villages. So there's two main reasons for that is we need to have some design standards baked into the zoning code to make it very clear what development is expected to do. There's also the development standards. So some of that will go into the design guidelines or design standards document. In addition to that, it's also important to do this at this point because of state law to bake in the amenities. Right now, we don't have amenities in our code. So what these zoning districts will do is provide a clear sort of path of what is expected from developers that are objective and how we get there, how we get those amenities, which is now lacking from our code. So it's that two pieces, sort of making clarity on sort of the design standards of the development as well as the amenities. And the codes, go ahead.
Sure. So, and speaking specifically about the 5 different zoning districts we were proposing, so this was as of February 10th. We actually have done a detailed analysis of the different types of villages that we have, and they're actually not that different as far as their base needs and base requirements. And so we feel that we can actually scale back the number of zoning districts we'd be proposing. And so we wouldn't have the 5. We might have the commercial and then the mixed use. And maybe be folding this into some of our other mixed-use zoning work that we have coming down the pipeline, because there's a lot of similarities of good development takes these sorts of design requirements and objective standards. So specifically to your question, and then using the urban village plans, making sure their objective standards kind of hone in on what the community specifically wants. That therein, I think, lies the power, and in making sure we get the communities engaged and they understand the importance of that village planning process to inform things that are a little more specific about the shape of their buildings, the way that their streetscape is formed, versus controlling that at a code level, which might be way too specific at a code level.
Okay, great. I guess that sounds good to me. My only kind of takeaway is, in dealing with the Berryessa Urban Village, I kind of have the sense of that up there, whatever we deal with the developers or the landowners, there's this possibility that they just want housing all over the place. And we as a city want more jobs. And there's this dispute about not just the combination of jobs to housing, but also where exactly does the housing go? Where's our frontage of the Berryessa Urban Village? Where's the back? And where's the housing versus to the commercial and the retail? And so we're talking about things like, commercial overlays and whatnot, with the objective of restricting housing to a certain corner of the urban village as opposed to letting it be wherever it wants. And I feel like that's what the state's saying, wherever housing could go, if they want it, they're free to do it. And so my understanding is, if we're gonna do commercial or 5, or just commercial and mixed use, to be mindful of, if there's this poison pill is not the right word, but I think you understand my meaning, where the state says you can do housing wherever housing is potentially allowed, we need to be mindful of how we're shaping our city and still kind of have some sort of lever or saying, yes, you can do housing, but not everywhere, just at least in this corner. So, thank you.
And just kind of an overall comment, I think the world is really changing. We are still getting our head around it, though you'll be receiving a memo. We'll come back to the council in April on this, but I think in the past, a lot of planning decisions were made sort of on a project-by-project level. We had design guidelines. There was a lot of negotiation. What's becoming very, very clear is the most important thing a city have for shaping its city is going to be its planning documents, its urban village plan, its general plan, its design standards. Those are where the planning gets done. After that, it's going to be a check-the-box exercise. So it's really, more of the work, and thankfully the citywide team, thanks to council, is more than double the size it was a year ago, but a lot more of the work needs to be done up front because there's not as much flexibility after when a project comes in. So this is still an evolving thing. We anticipate even more state laws will be coming that could tie our hands more, we'll see.
And I think the thing to keep in mind as well is many of the village planning areas moving forward are designated in our general plan as neighborhood community commercial. So housing isn't really even on the table for many of those places. And so we are in a very good position for many of these villages moving forward to do their comprehensive planning efforts and be mindful. Some of our older village areas, which are closer to the downtown core, had like urban res or urban village and other things mixed in, and so it made it a little more complicated. And those would, quite frankly, have been more difficult to plan with the upzoning and downzoning limitations of state law. But with our Horizon 2 and 3 villages, we're in a little bit of a better place, in my opinion.
Okay, well, I'm looking forward to your recommendations when you come back. I appreciate all the efforts that we're making to comply with all the various new laws that are being handed down here. I appreciate your patience with us and our questions as well. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, looks like it's unanimous. Thank you for your time. Is there anybody from the public who wishes to speak? All right, seeing none, this meeting is adjourned.